Annabel Denham's with us, though. We've been talking, Annabel, this morning about the huge size now of the civil service in this country. £100,000 salary, apparently not enough. So many of them now are over 100,000. And also there's been another 100,000 actual civil servants hired, despite a sort of supposed freeze on recruitment. And so there's now more than ever more civil servants working for the government. But up in Scotland, they've got a particularly different way of dealing with things, as they've got a story running this morning that says Scottish taxpayers footed a £14 million credit card bill over 3 years while Nicola Sturgeon was the First Minister. I mean, I thought I spent quite a lot of money on credit cards, but this really does take the biscuit. They've got basically £10,000 on VIP treatments for Nicola Sturgeon when she flew on official business when she was First Minister. They've also got purchases including a staff member's driving theory test, China crockery for a meeting room, a £27 home disco, Wellington boots for inspections, all sorts of hospitality and hotel accommodation at the Gleneagles Hotel, which is very nice. I've been there myself. And also loads and loads of yoga classes taken by the good members of the SNP. Now, according to a Holyrood spokesman, for security reasons, we cannot comment on the First Minister's travel arrangements, except for the fact that they seem to cost an awful lot of money. Also, apparently, they can't comment on the journey she may have taken from her home to the police station, where she was questioned for 8 hours over the course of a couple of months ago, when she was asked about all manner of things, monies that have gone missing. Also, they say this rather laughably, right? The Scottish Government is committed to delivering the best value for money for taxpayers and proactively publishes information about spending to improve openness and transparency. Well, I'm sure Nicola's very happy about that, because it looks as though the yoga classes and the meet and greet and the heel stoppers for making sure you don't fall over in your shoes is really, I mean, we are in the grip of what I would regard as some of the most corrupt politicians that have ever lived. What do you make of it?
Well, you can imagine how much the comms department for the SNP are scrambling around at the moment after this story broke. But no, Mike, I share in your outrage at the news that this much money has been put on the credit card. And, of course, it has echoes of the 2009 expensive scandal.
Yeah.
We haven't heard anything about moats or vases or bedside tables. Or there was one Labour MP, wasn't there, who had 4 beds over the course of 4 years that were put on expenses. But it's certainly, has echoes of that. And let's just see, what else may or may not come to light. But look, this is just a natural danger of a nationalist electorate that judges parties on intentions instead of their results. So look at the SNP's record in office, not least under Nicola Sturgeon. Look at how life expectancy for men and women went down, drugs deaths soared, the attainment gap widened drastically. The NHS is failing, waiting times are going up. But they're not being judged on that. They're being judged on whether or not they can sever Scotland from the rest of the UK. But of course, they've failed on that as well. And there'll be significant, I imagine, political ramifications from this news about Sturgeon's spending. I think you could be pretty confident that it's not going to go down well in a constituency like Rutherglen, which is about to have a by-election after its MP, Margaret Ferrier, was recalled, having taken that train journey during the coronavirus pandemic. So already they're on the ropes. But I think that this by-election, is going to be very telling. If Labour are able to win it, then it could pave the way for them to storm to victory at the 2024 election. Not only would that be in the short term a nightmare for the SNP, but I think it could almost sound the death knell for the party, because if you look back to 1999, the dawn of devolution, it could have been foreseen that in 3 consecutive general elections, the SNP, would sweep the board. It won between 60 and 95% of Scotland's constituencies. So, how many people would have concluded anything other than the arrival of an independent Scotland against that electoral track record? And yet, after all of these years, after constantly pushing for independence, they've made very little progress. And, if anything, the independence cause is looking more hopeless than it has over the course of the last couple of decades. So, I think that there are political consequences of this story breaking. It's just going to add to the sense that the SNP was not acting in its constituents' best interests. It's going to put the spotlight back on its record in government, not just independence, but across a range of areas. And people are going to be left asking themselves whether, do they feel any wealthier? Has their living standards improved under the SNP? And the answer will be no. So let's see what happens.
Absolutely right. I mean, amongst some of the other expenditure I'm just looking at here, the government credit card was used to spend £1,271 at Amsterdam Schiphol Airport in February 2020 when she was en route to Brussels. Now, I used to spend quite a bit of time at Schiphol Airport, flying from Glasgow to Washington, D.C. And apart from clogs and cheese, there's not a lot you can buy there. I mean, that's an awful lot of clogs and cheese, isn't it?
You'd have to try quite hard to spend those sums of money. Not least if you're getting a short-haul flight. It's not one of those trips to the airport where you're milling around in duty-free.
No.
But no, I mean, I think, that there is a sense that the SNP have turned from perhaps, a small, scrappy campaigning party into the arrogant, privileged elite. They are now the establishment, and in a curious reversal of roles, Labour are the underdogs in Scotland. And I think that, this story very much feeds into that. This by-election will play into Labour's hands, the idea that those roles have been reversed. I think I can imagine the electorate throwing their weight behind Scottish Labour. And, it's just immensely problematic. And it's incredible, really, if you rewind 12 months to think about the implosion of the Scottish Nationalist Party. Began really with that, with Sturgeon tying herself in knots over gender recognition, really backed herself into a corner. Then the shock resignation, and immediately the connection was made between those two things. But no, subsequently there's this alleged missing £600,000. That's being investigated by the police. Sturgeon being put into the back of a police car in handcuffs. The sense that Hamza Yousaf is not up to the job. And of course, when he was voted into power, he was the continuity candidate. Well, I sort of imagine people who put their support behind him wishing for anything but continuity Sturgeon right now.
Absolutely right.